I'm so glad to be able to get a chance to talk to you again because for viewers out there, we actually did this interview before and we lost it to a technical difficulty. So now we're back in action. So thank you for taking the time to join me again today.
Hi, it's nice to join you at last because
Okay, so
last time it didn't work out.
I am obsessed with how good you are painting. You somehow make oil paint look like it's done by pencil. I don't know how, like it's so finely detailed. Um at what point in time in your like artistic career do you get the ability? How long does that take for you to get so good at detail that it looks like it's done like with a fine pencil?
Actually, it's done with a really tiny brush, and uh,
So cool. I mean,
I still got a feeling I'm working other way around. I tried to make less details because before it was like all over details and it didn't look good. So it just takes time.
like
And of
no.
course, in computer, because I worked a lot in computer during one period. So it's just you can zoom in, so you can play with details much more. And now it's worse because I don't see that well anymore. So I need to use glasses for that.
Yeah, I got my readers on because if I don't, I can't like nothing. Like I see like
Especially when I do those little drawings on the artist proofs, I really need my glasses because I don't see anything.
I wondered, could you get like a monocle, you know, like a or like a magnifying glass? Does that help too? Like put a magnifying glass up to it and like, or just get one
Oh,
of those things like put
I
it on
think
your desk.
my eyes are not that bad yet. Maybe in time I will need it.
I mean, so okay, so what's interesting about you is that you've been involved with fantasy your whole life. I mean,
Yeah.
basically you and you come at it from all sorts of different directions. You are not just a master artist, but you've also you got your start out doing animation and screen writing, correct?
Yes, but I do it mostly for myself. I'm working on one long novel that is just still here in my table, and I'm not sure it's my you know love project because maybe one day I will finish it, but I really wanted to know how to do animation. But during the time when I started to go to the university, um, the technology was really bad at the time. Like
Hmm.
they were filming on a real film, and but I'm glad that I tried it. You had to draw every frame by hand, so
Right,
and
right.
just look onto the camera. Of course, now it's easier, and I try to play with Procreate Dreams and stuff. But well, it's a lot of work, and I don't have a lot of time.
Right, right. And then it comes into sort of clash with your schedule as
Yeah,
as an artist. And what
exactly.
okay, so and then looking at your history, it says that you early on that you sold you first got paid for a comic series, and I hope I'm not pronouncing this incorrectly. How do you pronounce that?
Luceniec, it's my town.
Okay.
And when I was about 15, I started to do comics with my friend who she was writing stories, and I was doing such a small comic strips just for our newspaper. And later, I mean, I didn't do just one comics, I did like tons of them, but those were kind of short. And there was a Slovak magazine about comics that just started to be published, and I did stuff during my high school. Every month I did a lot of drawings for that, and I kind of loved it because it was my first step into publishing world. It was really hard to start, but I always wanted to do cover art. which then I did.
Yes.
And
100, right? You've done over 100 books or something like that, like 100 book
books
covers.
and magazines, yes.
It's, do you ever stop and think, like, looking at your point in life, do you look at that and think, oh my gosh, like, that's a massive work of life work? Do you ever like pause and get a little blown away by how much you've actually accomplished? Because you have accomplished so much.
I think about it often, and sometimes it seems like another world, like this is another life I'm living now because, uh, yeah, I've been through a lot of conventions, a lot of meeting a lot of publishers in the past. Then I had kids, so everything kind of stopped, and now I'm back at Magic, and I do this 3D work for myself now, and
Tell me
yeah,
about that. The 3D work that you're doing for yourself. And when you do work for yourself, is that for like releasing your creative valve? Because I wonder how a creative person like you, it seems like everything you do is creative. And so what is
yeah,
a
I just
what's
I
private? Like, what do you do for yourself? Explain the difference and what that does for you as an artist, I guess.
for me it's kind of not really for myself because when artist does some paintings, it's also for himself or herself because you do what you like, more or less. But yeah, I've been just doing some kind of like jewelry like this,
Is
like
that
this
the ones you do from like 3D models?
yeah, this I did this in 3D. Ah, it's a real replica of Viking jewelry. And
That's
well,
so
behind me, maybe it's a little bit visible up there. The ship that is floating on a
yes.
ceiling.
Is it the weather light?
It's kind of big. Well, it's
It
about
looks almost looks like the weather light from Magic a little bit.
no, it's actually exact thing from one of my painting that I did inspired by Mike Oldfield music, and I got these huge floating ships, so I wanted to recreate it, and it's really like
It's
it's a big
now
one. It just looks small over there.
no, I mean, if it's got to be big if it's hanging from like this, like it's hanging like a proper lamp, like so.
It's actually on little chains, just in case. It's not so heavy, but well, it has
Yeah, if
its
it fell, you would be
time.
that would be
Yes,
heartbreaking.
it's above my working table. If it fell, all those cards waiting here to be signed and artist pros would be probably damaged.
Oh God. Oh, that would be that would be of like a red like alert meltdown. I don't that gave me a little
Yeah,
bit of a panic
Mark
attack.
Aronovich would kill me.
That's that funny. Oh my god. Oh gosh, that's yeah, that would give me a panic attack. Mike Oldfield, you seem to be inspired by his music a lot, like the Tubular Bells series, and so do you do a lot of do you listen to music when you're painting? Is that something that's common, or is it
Oh,
just like Mike
I
Oldfield that
used
gets you?
to. I used to listen to. Well, I prefer soundtracks,
Mm-hmm.
and usually it's what kind of painting I'm working on. It has to fit exact atmosphere. So I got the feeling because I got that funny story in university when we were just doing portraits of people who were sitting there, models.
Yeah.
My teacher came to me, and I had my Walkman in those days of my ears,
Right.
and I was like, "What are you listening to? Is it some horror movie or?" Yeah, I was actually listening to Terminator soundtrack or something like
Brad
that,
Fidel.
and it just transfers directly to the
I fucking
painting.
love Brad Fidel. I love Brad Fidel. Like
Yeah, it's
he's so he did the
really
Fright Night
cool.
score too. Oh
Yeah,
man. I actually the other day I
terrible.
was yeah the other day I was actually in a movie theater and there was a live Zoom with Tom Holland, the director of Fright Night, like in the theater. It
Yeah.
was so cool. Oh man, Brad Fidel. I can't believe you know who Brad Fidel is. I mean, like that's you know what? Okay, just side effect. Brad Fidel, the soundtrack for Fright Night 2 got lost to time. Like they lost the master tapes of it, and I was like,
Oh,
that broke my heart. But so you like so you listen to, so what are some other soundtracks that you listen to while doing your pieces? Like,
Well,
are there any magic cards where you've listened to?
I like to
Uh,
listen to Conan music or Lord of the Rings or I mean whatever. Uh, what else? I mean a lot. It doesn't come to my mind now.
yeah, because
Alan Silveri and Badalamenti is cool.
oh
Twin
god,
Peaks and what else?
Badalamenti,
Oh, I
yes.
love Galactica, Battlestar Galactica soundtrack. I just wanted to say that when I was in San Diego, Richard Hedge told me there is going to be concert of Greg Beer, who did Battlestar Galactica
Mm-hmm.
soundtrack, and it was in this blue house. It was incredible. I just loved it. I
That's
love the thing that it has these kind of Japanese drums and this Arabic style of singing. I don't know. It's kind of really strange mixture that I enjoy listening to.
it's sort of like world music, right?
Yeah,
Like but it's like space world music.
but if when you are there and all those guys come with those big drums and they started to beat it, it's like wow, it's
That's that.
incredible.
So they actually do the entire. They come out with all their instruments
Yeah,
and so it's like how many people are on stage?
I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but it was not with all the songs, but I know at one point all these, I don't know how many guys came, and there is another one with the electric violin, and he
Oh,
was just perfect.
the electric violin. I don't know why it's not used more often. I think it can do so. I mean, it can do more than a lot of times than an electric guitar because it can slide in between those notes and it dances. You know what I mean? Like it can.
Yeah, I just love them.
So, okay. So we're gonna go and we're gonna talk about some of the magic cards. And I think this is great just from the like story behind it. Like when you got the Gilded Lotus, you didn't really have any idea of what it is that you were doing, right? You kind of were going into it
Yeah.
blind.
I already told that story so many times, so probably everybody knows it. But yeah, I was really unhappy that I need to do this flower, and I wanted to do weapons or knights or something more fantasy than just some lonely flower. And yeah, I was just working on it, and I didn't feel happy with it. And then I found out what it was, of course.
And it's I mean not only is it gorgeous but like it is one of the more like I'm sure like one of the ones that people come up to you and are you know
Yeah.
wanting to get artist proofs and stuff like that. But so the weapons are really where your heart is that what you would say? Like is it weapons or is it themes?
Well, it's
Because
hard to say. I was mostly into science fiction before, so my heart is with spaceships. So, but I like, I like anything connected with past. What I say, no, nights, castles. Everything that is enigmatic and there are heroes and magic stuff.
so then getting Game of Thrones must have been pretty exciting for you. Can you tell us how the story behind how you got how you got to do the cover arts for those books? You did the German versions, correct? The German cover
Yes,
art for Game of Thrones.
for the
Uh,
collectible books. And yeah, I started with the cards, and that I think it began when I met George Martin, because I already knew his book. I think only first one was out at the moment. And I used to go to every world science fiction convention, and George was always there. And I was, showing my portfolio to people. And when I was in this publisher's party, I showed my portfolio to George, but also to 100 other people, and I didn't remember. And I think it was like 1 year later, and I got already to do cards for the collectible cards game. And I met George, and I was like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you at last!" And I was so happy. And he looks at me and tells like, "But we met before."
Oh
He
no.
was showing. Oh my God!
He
Yes.
seems like a nice guy. Is he as nice as he seems?
Oh yes. I mean, when we meet at some WorldCon, he always, we always go to dinner with his wife and a couple of people, and he always tells stories. And there used to be these private parties at the WorldCon. I think it was organized by this Brotherhood Without Banners. And George always came, and he could talk funny stories until morning.
Right. He's the storyteller. It's like
Yeah,
now speaking
he can really entertain people,
oh yeah, I
which
bet. I
I
bet he's
can't.
well, I mean, okay, so you say that, but one of the stories that I did not forget and that we have to hear again is the run in with HR Geiger. Or is it like with is it or is it I can't remember, is it Giger or Geiger? I
Well, I don't know how it is pronounced correctly.
I
Well, I
think it's
call him
Geiger.
Giger
I feel
because
like
Giger it's how it's pronounced in my language, but
okay, then
it's
you're
probably
probably right.
Geiger.
You're probably
Um,
right.
I've been to his place in Switzerland, but with friends because we were actually my friend. He was editor of the magazine Fantasia, and he wants to do the interview with him. So we met him. We could see the whole museum, and he sat with us in the
But
restaurant, Giga restaurant.
But
So
you were not like you were just sort of like hanging out. You were not like there in any official capacity. Your friend just invited you, right? Just said, "Hey, we're
well,
gonna
we
go."
were three friends who were. I was actually also writing for that magazine sometimes, some small articles, or of course, I did a lot of paintings for it, and we were just three friends who went.
And
Um,
what? How was the? I mean, what was he like? Because I'm so curious because it's like at that point he's so legendary. Now
yeah, but he
he's
was always legendary.
yeah, but it's like now that he's gone, it's now he's got
Mm.
like a mythology about him. He's like a Da Vinci, or like I mean,
I
he
don't
will.
know. I love alien movies, so
Oh yeah.
I just really admire the stuff he did, even if it's creepy sometimes. Well, most of the time, but
Well, they're
but
believable though.
he was really nice guy. I mean, when you were talking to him, you would not really realize he did all those paintings. It
He
just
would seem
you know
gentle.
I don't know. When you meet someone for the first time, you don't see inside of his mind, so it's hard to say. But he was really okay and nice.
Now, what like for instance, like when I see dark steel ingot, I think there's like a very like eager kind of inspiration though. I don't know when you
Really,
did that one. It's almost like a beetle, like or some sort of like scarab. What was the design behind that one? What was the story behind that one?
uh, ingot. Well, actually, I know I did that one just from scratch. I was just doodling and trying to come with some interesting. Yeah, maybe also the how is it called, the forge.
Dark steel
You
forge
know,
too.
I think I did them pretty much together, not together, but really close to each other. And
That makes sense.
maybe that one had more like Giger inspiration, but not really intentional. I just wanted it to do it that way. So I,
It's yeah. It's
I
not so
just
much.
did about two sketches and they chose that one.
It's not so much that it has anything to do with the style, but the fact that it seems to meld organic and inorganic material. There's the
I
merging.
actually really loved to use this for my spaceships. I like to use all those rusty stuff, rusty, not rusty, and I like to put them so such organic elements, so it doesn't look like everything else.
it's very apparent in the Mox Opal, and I know we talked about it last time. And now, since the Phyrexian story has been finished, because we could only speculate, but I loved that this painting, without even reading the flavor text, there is something hopeful about it. It's this Phyrexian holding this, like, this beautiful thing, and then in the background you have these other, like, I mean, you're not sure, it's some sort of like material that seems to be like hands that are reaching up to the heaven. What was that part of the art direction, or did you tell that story yourself, because you have such a storytelling uh element to your paintings that I'm curious.
Well, I just got a description that there should be this Mox Opal, and I got the pictures how it should look like, and they just told me there should be these hands holding it, but I didn't know what kind of creature should it be with those hands. So they just told me it should be kind of like organic, but kind of, you know,
Like metal, but
something like that. I'm not sure about the exact description, but I know I more or less came up with those hands, and I had also more variations. But about the background, I had the style guide, and I really liked one of those pictures. There was something similar to what I did behind. It really looks like hands, or some
yeah.
ancient throne in the background. But I just wanted something that has really strong lightning, so it's kind of, so the hands and the mugs come in the foreground.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, these are moments where I
And
wonder
I thought
about.
this imagination of something like throne, or it
Yeah.
was fitting for the mugs.
Yeah, but it gives to me, just the viewer, for me, it gives this feeling of hope in a set that was not very hopeful, in a time in Magic storyline that was not very hopeful, which I found fascinating, because it's difficult to put hope in a Phyrexian setting, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering too, with doing comics, and with working, and doing your own, like working on films, things like that, how much of that has influenced the way that you frame things, as far as an artist goes? Do you take, like, do you store, like, is there storyboarding to it, or is how do you, like, set up, say, the point of view of gemstone caverns, something like that, or along those lines? Like, how do you decide what angles you're going to go for when you are starting a piece?
Angles, you mean?
Like the way the camera would be positioned if the
Yeah.
camera were there.
That's something I don't really think about. It's more like uh, it's something you, maybe that's the secret how you do the paintings. You have to have it in your mind, like you can, it's not describable. It's something that
That's so
happens.
cool. That's so
It's like
cool.
you have to have it in yourself, somehow, how to do that frame correctly. Or maybe sometimes it just doesn't work. I try some sketches and I see like it doesn't look good. It's probably more, you have to turn it or use a different setting, because it's like when you look at the painting, sometimes maybe not everybody can do it. I thought everybody can, but probably not.
No, no,
You
they
have
cannot.
this feeling like it's broken. It doesn't work. It has to be one piece of flaw, because your eye is actually flowing through things that are in a painting. So um, you know when you place two things on each side, and one should be important, so it's like broken. It doesn't work. It's about feeling of the composition.
I
uh,
see. I see. Were there any, like, particular pieces in your like career that were challenging more than not? Like, were there ones that just, I guess, maybe the execution was difficult, or I mean, or it was just maybe like when I've talked to like Magali Villeneuve, she was very frightened of doing dragons when she had to do a dragon for the first time. She's like, I don't do dragons. And they gave me a dragon. Have you ever had any of those moments where
Of
you?
course.
What
There
would
are
you?
usually a lot of moments like that in every artist career because you always get some stuff that you don't like to do or you don't feel comfortable. I really have problems with dwarfs. I, I
Really?
cannot describe why. I just don't like them since I was kid. Maybe it has something to do with Snow White. I don't know, but I just I have problems to paint dwarfs for some reason, and it's nothing personal. It's just
Yeah, it just
um,
doesn't. It doesn't suit your.
and of course there were many magic paintings like that. I cannot name some. Of course, for example, this Maneki, was he called Maneki? The It was from Kamigawa, all those
Hmm.
creatures that were bad looking, and I really didn't know what to do there. I mean, description was like something menacing, and it was this fevered dream called something fevered dream or
Yeah,
kami of
Maneki the
pollution.
Fever Dream. The which
I
I mean,
was at the last at that because it was too abstract for me, and I, I don't know. I didn't like it.
so you that's one you personally don't like because I like that one be mainly because it's a fever dream. I mean, it could be. I mean, I for anybody who's had a fever dream,
You
like
mean the one with the red thingy?
yep,
Yeah, I really had problems with that. I started the sketching and I it was just a stop. I just didn't know where to go from there. Um, then somehow I moved and did anything first that came to my mind, but that was hard for me
it's a
because
standout piece from Kamigawa because it's a spirit. So I love the way that it looks like veins and blood, like blood.
yeah,
There's this feeling of like the veins are attacking you. Very John Carpenter.
maybe I was okay when I already did it, but I had hard times to come with any ideas at the beginning. And I was asking art director like, what exactly does he want? And he was telling me like, I trust you do whatever you think. I mean, oh my god,
You're
I
like,
didn't.
no, that's not what that's sort of a catch-22. You get to the point where you're so successful and they trust you so much that they're like, you don't need any direction, and you're like, oh, please give me some direction.
It was hard. Well, of course, there were some like once I had to do monkey. I don't know how to do monkeys. I mean, I don't like to paint my monkeys. And of course, I was very happy when I got the unicorn because I love unicorns.
The unicorn, that's another one, like Emil the unicorn. It is nuts because I just don't understand how you can do that with painting.
Wait. Ah,
Oh my god,
got it.
that is so cool. I mean, how, ugh. I mean, it's moments like this where I'm like,
Wait, the light isn't right.
oh,
It's
but
not.
that is
It's not
just
a good light because you don't see the colors properly. At least I don't see it
it's
because they are
look.
more.
For me as a viewer, seeing you hold the paint, I mean, it's first of all, it's a gorgeous piece. How long does it take you to do that? I mean, what's the amount of time you have? What, like, because again, I look at
It's
something like that and I'm like, that would take me what, like about maybe 15 years if I think.
well, it's really funny with painting because usually you can work on it for such a long time as the deadline is. So maybe you start to play with it, but later you are looking at your calendar and seeing like, okay, I got 3 days. Okay, so this needs to be to
No.
that do. This needs to be done for one day. This needs to be.
I mean, is
Usually it's like okay, it's like for me, the longest time, I need the longest time for sketches to get idea, to have the right composition in my head. And usually you need to do it for like, I don't know, 1 month. Month is probably the normal time.
I mean, it's for the
It
layman's per
depends. And then you have like 1 or 2 weeks for the actual painting.
it's
But
it's just insane the amount of detail that's on it. I mean, I, I can't. It's hard for me as a viewer to wrap my head around that this was done with like brushes, because the control is so like it's so tight.
actually, it looks, this is pretty detailed, but for example, these flowers from close up are not so detailed.
But
They just look like it.
But
Um,
I mean, but that's also that could be the sort of imitating how camera focus goes. You know, like if something's in
yeah,
the foreground, you know, it doesn't need to be. But I mean, if I were to guess, I thought, oh, this has to be pencil. I mean, because it's way too detailed to be painting, and then to see that it's painting. I mean, it's just
actually, it looks like that, but most of it, it's not that tiny brush. Only after I put the color on, I do the edges and stuff. But
so that's so you do the basic part first, and then the last part of it is the etchings.
I got this one.
That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous.
This is a
Um,
smaller one.
and
Yeah, mostly I put the basic colors and then I add another. I like with acrylics. I like to work in layers, so I actually need to put the first paint down really quickly because I hate the white canvas. I'm afraid of it. Uh, After that, I put another and another layer on top of it, and I like those details at the end because when everything is kind of done, I work on the details parts at the end of everything. So
it's what gives it's what gives you a specific like it gives you it's your style. It's that's definitely your style. The
probably because when I started to paint, I mostly worked with some pens for comics. I did pens and watercolor, and but I don't like watercolor. And later I started with oils. But problem with oils is it dries really slow. So, there were times when wet paintings went into the scanner, and of course, by this act, it was destroyed because it
Ah,
leaked. I had to repair it. But so I started to work with these Winsor Newton acrylics. I like the colors, and I really I needed some time to learn to work with them because they use real pigments. So some of them are naturally transparent, some are opaque. So you need to get hold of, what works with what. And then I found out these layers really work for me. And I had a lot of artists friends who told me how to use which colors and what's good to use. But at the end, you find your own way how it works for you.
right. But
Everyone is specific. You cannot teach someone to do it like you do it because he may like it differently.
yeah,
So
it
it's a
evolved.
process of learning, I think.
Right. You evolved. It's like an evolution, a natural evolution, right?
And it's the same when I work in Photoshop, or now I started to work in Procreate. uh, you just cannot. I'm really into it. I use intuition because I'm really computer person. I love computers,
Hmm.
and I usually never read how you should do something. I just try.
Really?
Okay, with ZBrush, I had to read stuff before, but I think if you know how to work with one program, you can just switch to another. For example, with Procreate, I just jumped into it because it's very similar to Photoshop for me. I mean,
And I'd
and
imagine.
first thing I do is I create my own brushes. That's the basic thing.
Okay.
My
Okay.
everything my own, and I actually mimic probably the style I'm using with acrylics because I want it to look like painting. Because
Yes,
everybody can do digital stuff that looks like photo or something. I
right.
I just want it to be, very similar to paintings I do normally.
What's fascinating that I was talking to Michele Giorgi the other day, and he said that one of the things that he learned was that never rely on the pre-made brushes, and that sounds like what you're talking about here. You make your own brushes, so no matter what, even if it's done digitally, it's still going to have the Martina. It's going to
Um,
have the Martina touch.
yeah, I just don't feel comfortable with brushes that are in there. And then I realized you can play with them and adjust them, and I just need exact quality that I want. Without
Right.
that, I cannot start to work on it. Uh, because what I do, I maybe start to work from some acrylic brush, but I want it to be more half transparent, so I can do half tones. And yeah, they kind of mimic the style I'm working with normal paint.
It's. I mean, you and it's really there's really nothing you can't do. And also, just as a side, the way that it blows my mind with the way that you can light stuff, like with Mana Geyser, Lux Cannon. I mean, the way that you light up lava or fire. I mean, it, it even the Rick Smatty Dungeon Palace, like it almost like it not almost. It feels like it's hot to the touch. How do you do? How does that? What's the secret to making it pop like that? Is it just color knowledge? Is that what the whole thing is? Or do you just do that from intuition as well?
Well, painting. mm, Well, it's hard to say. I got one old teacher at the university, and once he showed me some painting of old master. I don't remember his name because I'm horrible with names. I can imagine it.
Yes.
And that painting, he told me, and I think that's most important thing. You have to see the silhouette, even if you have closed your eyes. There is two basic things in painting. There is a light and shadow, light and darkness. How is it in the painting? Where is it situated? And if it doesn't work, if you have closed your eyes and look at the painting and you don't see the clear silhouettes, it's just going to be, chaos. So that's one aspect. You have to have distinct areas of dark and light. And another thing is color. And another teacher told me, like, it's never good to put too many colors in it. And I just don't like too many colors. I usually like it when it has one shade and maybe two shades of colors.
Yeah. Okay. I
Well,
see.
not two shades, two colors in many shades, but just two colors, and maybe
Right.
something small of third color, because otherwise it's also going to fight. So sometimes this concept needs to be kind of more simplistic, and then you can add stuff, more details and other stuff into it. But when you many artists do it, like look at the painting in a mirror. That is one thing, because
I
you
see.
see it when it's flipped. Somehow it works with your brain. You see what's not
You
straight and
see it
what's
from
wrong.
another perspective. You see it from an
Yes,
outside.
and another thing is you can in a computer it's easy because you just put it into grayscale mode. If the shapes are just lost, it doesn't work. And it's the same with this lava because you just need to put something really light against something really dark and it will pop.
That's amazing. I
And
mean, it's just
yeah, when you work in computer, you can just adjust it so you see it. But in real life, it sometimes look good to look, just reflection in the dark, for example, or look at the painting in the dark when it's almost dark, but it's still some light, and you can see if you can see still the shapes in it. It means the light and the dark is good done, well done. I
mhm.
cannot say it in English properly. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and one thing I'm curious about Thought Monitor. You wrote that you were, and what's interesting is you don't like posted that you were proud of the piece and it's a great piece. But what was it about that piece that made it something that just you were openly like sharing your joy about it with the audience? I mean, it's what I guess was the inspiration behind you. What makes you love a painting so quickly and want to publicly announce it? What was the reason behind that?
Sometimes it's also a really difficult question. For example, this Emil, I really loved it because I like unicorns. I love the old, the animated movie Unicorn,
The last unicorn?
Last Unicorn. When I
Oh,
was a kid, maybe it has some, you know, I loved horses. My whole childhood, I was drawing horses over and over. And my teacher in school just told me I'm forbidden to draw horses because she was
that's
sick of
terrible.
it more. No, I mean she was a really good teacher. She just wanted to teach me also something else than
Oh,
horses. So when I couldn't do horses, I put just some, artificial horse in a store or something. I just try to. It's the same with my son. He always paints thanks, words of thanks.
is it? And I mean, I guess growing up having a mother who is doing this, so he took an interest. And do you think that's is it become something of a family thing of are you an artistic family or is it just
It's just me, I think. Even if I think people from my family could paint, they just maybe didn't enjoy it that way as I do.
hmm
Okay, it's not a good word. You can't just enjoy it. You have to be crazy about it because
you
if
have
you
to
just enjoy it, you are not working in the business for this.
right.
But my son did some crazy thing. He already published his first illustrations, even younger than I was when I published my first illustration.
Oh,
And I didn't
you
know
were
about it.
young.
It was not my work. So
And you were, I mean, but how old were you when you first published? What, like 11 or something?
me, I don't know, maybe there was something like 15, but it was hard. It was still during, at the time there were communism in my country and there was no internet. You just, Star Wars movie was forbidden and I loved it. Yeah,
Rough.
because of the title Star Wars. It was some, US program Star Wars, and you couldn't do something against Soviet Union. Um, and but it was kind of funny. We were some kind of family that didn't join communism, but well, my closest family was in also in Ukraine and also in the USA. So we were mixed family, and yeah, it was hard. Like finding science fiction books was even crazy because you couldn't get American classics. There were people who were getting them from abroad. It was forbidden. They just copied them, rewriting them, and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't live for those times. I came to fandom later, to science fiction fandom and fantasy. But it was nice in those days because it was more like it smelled like forbidden stuff, and forbidden
Right.
is interesting.
Right.
Now it's
Yeah,
like all over the place.
it is. It's crazy to think that you worked with you worked with Roger Christian, the guy who invented the lightsaber. I mean, like
Uh, yeah, I did work on one of his projects, but it's still, we are still waiting if something happens with it. But it was his dream project, Black Angel, and I did a lot of drawings for that. And it's actually good because that's the time when I started to work with ZBrush because I tried to do some models of the weapons and stuff and jewelry, and I really enjoyed to work in 3D. It was, but I did a lot of sketches for that project. We'll see if something happens in the future.
if you had to pick um one artist, living or dead, and to have dinner with, to have a conversation with. It could be from any time, and it could be from any period, like whatever of any period of their life. Like if it was them in their 20s or them in their 30s.
Whew.
Who? I guess. How about we'll make it easier? You can pick one that's living and one that's dead, and that you could have over for dinner and just have a really good conversation with them. You know, maybe have some wine.
The problem is those who are like I already had that conversation, so I don't need to think
So
about
you've
it.
already
But
had that.
I mostly met all of those artists at the
Okay, so
past.
then the dead ones
But
you haven't met, at least, or at least, well,
the living
not
ones, I
counting
can
Geiger,
tell
not
you,
counting
like I
Geiger.
was really glad to meet Michael Whelan because I really loved his paintings. He doesn't. I think he doesn't do magic, but he did a lot of science fiction stuff, also fantasy. Of course, Donato is just great.
Oh,
I mean, when I saw all that stuff, I visited him once in his studio long time ago, and Todd Lockwood is great artist. I mean, he's a good friend. And from the dead, well, maybe for me it was be interesting to talk to Leonardo da Vinci, but
yeah.
maybe not so much because of his paintings. If you don't listen to me now, but I really admire his mind when he thought about all those, you know, physical stuff,
The,
physics about physics and about, you know, flying and
yeah.
about,
Do you
all
think
his.
do you think that's why Thought Monitor is one of your favorites? Because it is a Da Vinci like I mean, it's something I could see him doing. It's
Uh,
maybe
Actually, I love Monitor. Really, that's another painting I love because I no, I think it doesn't have something to do with him, but it has to do with how I enjoy to do 3D stuff because I like to create, and especially I like these because it felt science fiction.
yes, yes, yes.
And
It's
I really love to create visions of spaceships or some other planets, environments, and some buildings. Anything that is really creative. And this was really creative. I didn't need to do, I didn't get some direction that I need to use something existing. The description was just like this thing that looks half, uh, how do you say it in English? Okay, half mechanical and half biological,
organic.
organic. And for me, it was really fascinating because it's exactly what I like to do when I do science fiction.
It's it's also, and
So
when I
I really had to could play with it all the way I wanted. That's why I love it.
Are you? Do you think you could make a 3D? I mean, could you do a 3D model of it, like the ship behind you? Like that would be really cool to see, like a hanging thought monitor.
Good.
That'd
I
be so
could, but
cool.
actually, there is another thing I actually did. First, I did the 3D model, and from that model, then I did the painting.
That's so cool. I mean, so
And
you
I
really.
cannot tell you which one because it's not out yet.
Oh, okay, all right. So then, what happens is I'm gonna have to guess. I'll let you later and be like, was it this one? And you can maybe when it comes out later. That's so cool.
When it's published, you will know.
I will know. That's so
I
cool. I
think.
mean, and I mean, I
Actually, there are
imagine.
two pieces, and I think you will know both. I did both in 3D first.
I would imagine creating the 3D model and then painting the 3D model. That must be like really
Um,
satisfying for you
for
because
me, it's much easier because when I started to do 3D, I realized when I start to think about some painting, I think in 3D. I don't think in two dimensional. First, I create that thing in my head, like it's in space. Uh, for me, it's actually more difficult to do the 2D paintings because then I have to transfer it from my head to 2D, and sometimes I feel like it's not like I envision it. So when I did it in 3D and then I just turn it the way I wanted it, it works better for me.
Oh wow. So you okay,
I
so
know it's kind of crazy, but all my visionary stuff in my head is in 3D for
that's
some
actually
reason.
that's fascinating. So yeah, from what you're saying, so when you have to transfer it into 2D, you almost feel like you have to flatten your vision, right?
Exactly.
That's
Because
fascinating.
I have this I don't know how it when I need to create something, it's just I always can find the way how to create it, even
So
mechanically. And
that
for me, it's really cool that we have something like 3D printing because in old days they had to cut it from something, and it's just time consuming, and you need space, and you need to have materials. And now I just can put it directly from my head to the computer, and it's there.
that's fascinating. That's I mean, you should I'd be like if you had time, if there was like multiples of you, I'd be like one would be running a jewelry line, the other would be running a 3D model, like you'd have like a 3D model company, the other one would be doing magic, the other one would be doing your comic and which I did want to bring up a little bit because I'm curious about it. I haven't heard the character's name pulled up here. The Lomail and Nikki. Those are two names that I
Yeah.
saw. So, can you tell us a little bit about those without giving anything away, or is
Well, it's actually Nikki is called my novel that I'm writing for 30 years.
uh
It's
huh?
actually pretty much written. I just the problem is I do a lot of stuff, a lot of drawings, and I really have three books written, three
Really?
sequels. I just need to polish it and to add some more dialogues and stuff like that. But it the problem is I don't have time for it. It's always something that jumps up that I need to work on. So for me, it's really difficult to work on a story, then switch off, go to another project, and return because I forget where I left and all those little details.
Have you workshopped it? Have other people has it been seen by other eyes? I mean, have you given it to other writers or things like that to just
There were
look at?
people who saw it, but it was still not finished at that time, and uh, I think it's more my secret project for me right now, and I should finish it. I think.
I mean, yeah, and then just if I'm throwing it out there, I have a master's in English. I've done editing. I've edited a few books myself. So if you want somebody just
Really,
yeah, so if you want somebody to look over it for free of
but it's in
charge,
Slovak language. That's the problem.
oh, okay, that might be difficult.
I
Well, if you
thought about writing it in English. The problem is I can read books in English because that's how I learned English actually from reading books, science fiction books. That's why my vocabulary is better in science fiction stuff than in normal. But
that's so cool, actually.
the problem is my English is more passive, maybe that I really don't know so many words that I should know for writing
Well,
because
I mean,
I tell it like in easy way, and in book you really need more elaborate
but see, if we
language.
just do a translation of it, do a basic translation of it, and then get on the phone and say, you read the sentence and then I say, I think maybe you meant to, a word here would be like, like just for example, organic, like tossing in organic here might be useful, and then it's like that's like basically what the editor does. The editor comes in and just like says, hey, I think you meant this, or it'd probably be better at this. Like, and that way it takes some of the pressure off of you because it's almost impossible. I'd say is impossible to properly edit your own work when it comes to writing. The
Yeah.
only thing that I can say is a useful technique is whatever you write, stand there and read it out loud to yourself.
I've heard this, and I actually started to do it because there is one short story I wrote for this novel, and I tried to do it in English. Then I read it aloud, and just that didn't. Some parts just don't feel right or don't feel like I would write them in my own language.
But the stuff they do with Google Translate. Like for instance, for my channel, I have a guy who works with me from Brazil, and we are doing some videos that are in Portuguese. And so what I'll do is I write the script in English, and then I have it translated, and he goes in and tweaks it and makes it
Ah,
proper for the
yeah.
Portuguese speaking languages. So it's never out of the picture. If I would love to see what it is that you write, even if it's just a short story or if it's just a couple of pages, just to test the
I
waters.
actually wrote one fantasy story before I read any fantasy story, and I won the second place with it.
Well, there you go. I
But
mean,
I
so
was
and
17 or 18 at the
See, so
time.
right there, I mean, it's obviously not a matter of whether or not it's going to be good. And I think that there's enough curiosity with how much of like a legacy you already have for yourself as an artist. I mean, and that's the wonderful thing about you artists is that a lot of you have these when you paint these paintings, even though you have a style guide or you have some sort of parameters that are put upon you, you still manage to make these really fascinating behind the scenes stories that go along with it that you keep to
Actually,
yourselves.
it's funny when you talk about it because for me, it's really like always story behind it.
Yeah,
I feel about the painting like about the story. I always try to think about some stuff that's going on in the background, or it's a story. It's a real world that I see
yeah.
and try to
I mean, and to me
tell.
as a writer, it's fascinating because I think that I think with art, it's like for me when I listen to music, I see color. Like that's something
Let's
that
say
happens. You really? You got the okay, so there you go. So it's and every different type of art is just it's another translation of what someone's trying to do. Like a book can inspire a painting can inspire a song, and they
yeah.
all sort of work in this sort of grand circle. And so it's just a matter of how the artistic mind works. And it's fascinating with painters. The if I could have if like my dream would be to interview, like say, have magic artists pick one painting, and I'd be like, tell me the full story behind this painting. I want to know the world. Like write it as though you're telling me a short story, and then put the painting next to it, and just have everybody's story, with the painting, and just present it as a group of things. Because I think it would be a wild experiment.
And you know what's interesting for me when I do a painting? Somehow, what's happening around me, it's conserved into that painting. Like I know I did one painting when my grandmother died, and
Oh,
it's like I look at it and I know exactly what was happening while I was doing each detail.
that's
For
you.
me, it works that way.
A memory is you. It's almost like a time
It's like
capsule.
conservation of memory, what was going on in the world.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's almost like the experience you get when you smell something that brings back a memory, and it's just like
Yeah,
boom, it hits just like hard. And
yeah,
you're having that with like, I bet you. I mean, I bet you can imagine it was like whatever brushstroke was happening. Like if something significant happened during a brushstroke, or the moment where you get some sort of news, or in that instance,
yeah,
that's a pretty
exactly.
that's
Like
that's fantastic.
when I was in a really something bad going on, I usually hate that painting afterward
Oh, yeah, because you have to
because it's
record.
connected. It's
Yeah,
just there.
you have like you're forced to have a negative memory
Yeah,
tattooed onto a canvas. That's
exactly.
interesting. Wow. Well, before I let you go, I just want to know, is there anything that you are working on that you can talk about? And I will be hounding you afterwards. I'll be like, I just give me a page or two from your novel and let me translate it. Just let me have a look see, because I genuinely am curious. I've seen some of the arts that you've done for it. I mean, the sketches that you've done for it and the characters you've done for it. I mean, it's obvious that you put this incredible amount of work into it. I think, I think it probably is more finished than you realize. You just might be a little protective of it because it is your lifelong creative.
Maybe
Yeah, exactly. But
maybe it's something. It has something to do with the fact that when I started to paint, there were a lot of people that were telling me you cannot paint or you cannot publish that stuff anyway, or you know, and maybe after those years I got used to it and I'm more resilient to it, uh, in connection with painting, but not in connection with writing. I'm really personal about it. So
I mean, but here's the thing, though. I mean, you're just as good at it because I've met so many artists who, when they tell me a story, I'm like, that's a fantastic story. At the very least, it's a story that would be a magnificent pitch for a Hollywood film. And I mean, if you've got the bones to pitch a Hollywood film that would work, the rest is just like just filling in the blanks. I mean, and if you've I really do believe that so many artists are, I call, closeted writers. They're just like, they write in secret and they don't want to tell anybody, but they're just as good as the public writers, because there's a reason why a George R.R. Martin becomes interested in you as an artist, because he sees your ability to capture what he's writing onto a canvas, and he can see the translation that's being done. So I think that it's just a matter. I think artists, maybe you're right. Maybe people who were jealous and maybe kind of bitchy and not very nice were saying, you can't do this because I can't do this.
you know what's funny, because this is what I'm telling to young artists when I have some panels and talk to young people. Like, never listen to anybody who is telling you you cannot do something. But the good critic is okay because it's teaching you.
Yes.
But never listen to somebody who tells you you cannot do it. If you really want to do it and go after it, you can manage. But the problem is I cannot apply it to myself, not in writing.
Well, yeah, that's the human condition, right? It's like whenever somebody else in your life has like a problem, you're like, oh, I know
Yeah.
exactly what their problem is. They're doing this, but the second it becomes to you, like as human beings, we're complete. I mean, because we're so good at lying to ourselves, we're so good at that stuff. Like I've been there too. I've been like, wow, I convinced myself that total bullshit was true. And then I go to people around me. I say, "Did you notice this about me?" They're like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." And it's yeah, like we all talked about it. I'm like, ugh. But yeah, no, I think I think anybody who tells anybody, especially young people, that they can't do something, that is just that is just jealousy and inadequacy.
But if you are young, you don't
You don't
actually.
realize that, yeah,
It just stabs you, because
yeah.
you cannot fight back yet. You are just trying to find the new world, and when somebody tells you something, like when I was 18, there was a guy who told me, like, at the convention and I wanted to be an artist, and he told me, "My dear, go back to the kitchen where you belong."
Whoa,
That's the thing I cannot forget. I mean, I would kill him.
that's fucked up.
No, it's like when you are 18 years old and somebody tells you this, you are really hurt. It
Yeah,
hurts
and
a
that's
lot. And there were many instances like that. And you just have to stop to listen to them and
yeah. I
stop
mean,
to care
yeah, and it
and
go
do your own thing.
and wherever they are, if they're around, to be
Yeah, but
like,
in
oh,
that age, it's really hard.
oh, that I no, I agree. I agree. I was lucky in a sense that I had a fighter spirit. I had an advisor tell me in my second year of college, and this was because in college I was fucking around. I maybe was partying harder than I should have, and I was letting my grades drop, but I wasn't really giving it all. And I had this guy who didn't even really know me. He was barely in
Yeah.
my department, and he goes, "I don't think you have what it takes to be a writer." And I thought, "Oh, really?" And by the time I graduated, I got best creative nonfiction of 2004, and I'm in the library, and I was like, buddy, like don't tell me I can't do it. But for somebody to say that too, especially the sexist, like the sexist, that's vicious. That's vicious. I mean, to say something to you just because, I mean, to throw it in and say back to the kitchen and like fuck you, buddy. Like,
No, it was those times in this country, and it's different now. I'm just old now, so
well, but
it's a long time ago.
but you paved the way. There's young women who are able to look at your body of work and say, she did it, and why can't I? I mean, you live by example, right? It's, you did it, on your own terms with your
No,
own,
there are many
talent.
fantasy artists, but especially in those years, you have to see that it was like men's world.
Right.
Most of these artists were men, and only in that time, first, the women started to write science fiction here in Czechoslovakia. It was still Czechoslovakia at that time. Then we split to two countries. Um, Now
It's
it's much easier, I think.
I mean, even with some of the first Magic the Gathering artists that I interviewed back in, like, from the 1993, for some of the original artists that, there's a handful of women that I've interviewed, and they've all had to deal with it. They were like, they said it was a boys club, and it basically,
Exactly.
you walk in and somebody says something about your looks, be it, or, everybody, like one artist was talking about, I think it was, I can't, but she was talking about how she didn't realize that all the guys had crushes on her, and she didn't make it to one of the meetings, and the meeting discussion was about how hot she was, and she was really bothered by that, because she's like, why the
Yeah,
fuck are you talking about how hot I am when I'm not around? That has no place in the office. And
I
but
know
back
the
in
feeling. It's just,
yeah,
well, it was like that. Yeah, it
but
was hard time. I mean, I got some bad feelings about those times.
yeah, yeah. But I will say there's a cool picture of you when you were young. You were younger. You're wearing a night outfit, and oh my god, you're like a dead ringer for Tori Amos. It's kind of crazy. Like it's. I'm going to put a picture of Tori from, like, because it's like, wow, she looks a lot like Tori Amos there. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a pianist, and just I'll show you a picture of it. It's like, it's almost like dead ringer. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. She looks so much like Tori. Tori's a piano player. She started playing at
But which
2.
one, Tori Amos?
Yeah, Tori Amos.
I
You look
know
like,
her.
there's this. She started playing at two
I know
years
her.
old. Yeah, I got to interview her once. Coolest lady ever.
Oh,
And she said the same thing about, like, the music industry, it being a boys club. So I think it's
that's
like,
interesting.
I think it's like that across the arts in general, and I try to be aware of that as a man, like, because I mean, honestly, like, I was raised by a strong woman, so I'm not threatened by strong women. Like, I love strong women because that's my mom. So I'm
Yeah,
comfortable around strong women. It's like, I'm not bothered. And I think anybody who is bothered probably has more mommy issues than they like.
probably. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking about
that's
it.
very true. But yeah, but let you go. Is there anything that you'd like to plug? As far as your work, and I know you got stuff coming up in Magic, but any other things that you'd like to discuss, if you can?
Well, the ones for music I cannot discuss. Some other are on wait, and I work on some of my old stuff now, which I also cannot talk about.
So
So
we'll
it's
just
very
have to
hard.
wait and see.
Yes, but I hope soon you will see.
Well, I know we do. I know that we do too. So, well, thank you so much again for doing this. I appreciate it.
And thank you very much.